Hello people, I'm Tommy, and happy 250th birthday to the original 13 colonies. If you're from any other state, go fuck yourself. This is a day for the stripes, not the stars. Many moons ago, me and a couple friends were playing Crusader Kings 3, a game where you control a royal lineage, and based on your actions, your character will gain a title based on a multitude of factors. These royal titles are known as epithets, and there are many of them throughout both Crusader Kings 3 and human history. You've definitely heard of the Great, the Magnificent, and the Terrible, but have you heard of the Slobberer, the Barefoot, and the Universal Spider? These nicknames can mean literally anything, and can be smart or really stupid. So for fun, let's look at all of the 45 people who have been president of the United States and give them an epithet based on something they did as president, how the public perceived them, or a physical trait. This is an idea that I've had for a while. Some of these nicknames are pretty good, others are really stupid, so if you have any good ones, let me know. But for now, George Washington the Great. If any US president is deserving of the highly coveted title, the Great, it's Washington. He was our first president, and he set the stage for how every president going forward would operate. But I'm gonna come out and say it. I, Thomas Gowers III, not a big fan of the whole slavery thing. A lot of the early presidents had slaves, and Washington included, so that part, not so great, but he was the only president who would get this title, and also, he watches me sleep. John Adams, the Enlightened. Not only is this a reference to the fact that the American Revolution is a product of the Age of Enlightenment, but it's also because John Adams did not like slavery, so good for him. Thomas Jefferson, the Educated. Often considered our smartest president, Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence, bought the Louisiana Territory, and his parents must have been smart because they gave him the greatest first name in human history. James Madison, the Short. At 5'4", he is our shortest president. James Monroe, the Good. He was popular for his time, and the title of the Good comes from the fact that he presided over the era of good feelings. John Quincy Adams, the Wise. Quincy Adams was a highly educated man, and just like his father, was opposed to the institution of slavery. How wise. Andrew Jackson, the Orphan. His dad died before he was born, and by 14 he had no family left. I'm sure that didn't cause any tyrannical tendencies by the time he got to the White House. Martin Van Buren, the Intolerant. Although it was Jackson who signed the Indian Removal Act, it was Van Buren who carried out the infamous Trail of Tears, resulting in the deaths of over 10,000 Native Americans. William Henry Harrison, the Old. He was the oldest president of his era and the first to die in office. John Tyler, the Fickle. Being fickle means that you change your mind, feelings, and loyalty, and John Tyler abandoned the Union and joined the Confederacy. James K. Polk, the Honest. When Polk ran for president, his major promises were annexing Texas, acquiring California and Oregon territory, lowering tariffs, and only running for one term. After 4 years, he had done all of these things, and although he didn't fulfill every single promise, he did fulfill the major ones, so good for him. Zachary Taylor, the Idol. He really didn't do much during his short presidency, and it's with these next few presidents that the country begins to unravel into civil war. Millard Fillmore, the Compromiser. He signed the Compromise of 1850, and that just further kicked the can of slavery down further. Franklin Pierce, the Sorrowful. When your son is brutally killed in a train accident and then your wife blames you for the rest of your life, you become a heavy drinker and incredibly depressed during your presidency. James Buchanan, the Unready. Often considered our worst president, James Buchanan was unfit for the office and made the Civil War an inevitability. Abraham Lincoln, the Liberator. He was our president during the Civil War, and he signed the Emancipation Proclamation and the 13th Amendment, bringing an end to slavery in the United States. Also, if you want a nickname based on a physical trait, he can be the Tall, because he was our tallest president. Andrew Johnson, the Bad. He was against the agendas following the Civil War and did not like the radical Republicans in Congress. Everyone hated him, and he was one vote away from impeachment. Ulysses S. Grant, the Drunk. Grant did a lot of good in his life. Being General of the Union was really badass, but he was also a heavy drinker, and that is what he's remembered for. Rutherford B. Hayes, the Bearded. He had the longest beard of any president. James A. Garfield, the Lion. Alright, this is the stupidest one yet. His last name's Garfield. Garfield's a cat, and lions are cats. Chester A. Arthur, the Sheep. He had mutton chops. And mutton comes from sheep. Grover Cleveland, the Forgotten. Cleveland was known for doing something that no other president had ever done. But recently, another president has done it, so who cares? Benjamin Harrison, the Younger. He was the grandson of William Henry Harrison, who was the old, so he has to be the younger. William McKinley, the Colonizer. McKinley was a big fan of imperialism, taking the Philippines during the Spanish-American War and annexing Hawaii, all in the name of freedom and not caring what the native population thought. Theodore Roosevelt, the His big stick diplomacy, his trust-busting, and his depiction in political cartoons made him this larger-than-life figure in American history. Also, he was played by Robin Williams. William Howard Taft, the Fat. This is by far the easiest epithet I've given. Weighing at 340 pounds, Taft was our largest president. And I know you're gonna say it, but yes, I am aware that when he became Chief Supreme Court Justice, he lost a lot of weight. But people don't remember that. He's the fat president, and that's his legacy. Woodrow Wilson the Terrible. Warren G. Harding, the Man. Other than having a corrupt cabinet, what really did Harding do? He was like a guy. And then he died. Calvin Coolidge, the Popular. Coolidge oversaw the Roaring Twenties, and because of that, he was able to coast along as a well-liked president. Herbert Hoover, the Unfortunate. It wasn't Hoover's fault the Great Depression happened, but he did make it a lot worse. Had he been president a decade earlier, he probably would be looked at in a way more favorable light. Franklin D. Roosevelt, the Swift. Our longest-serving president and the one that guided us through World War II sure was swift in that old wheelchair.
The wheelchair doesn't define me!
Harry S. Truman, the Bookish. Other than vaporizing Japanese people, Truman was an avid reader and a lifelong fan of books. Dwight D. Eisenhower, the Victorious. He was a 5-star general, supreme Allied commander in Europe, and the most important thing he did was begin construction of the interstate highway. John F. Kennedy, the Handsome. Kennedy has always been seen as an attractive president for some reason. I think that's just due to the fact that he became president at such a young age, but if we're really looking at it, he doesn't even crack the top 3. Sorry, buddy. Lyndon B. Johnson, the Reformer. Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, and the Fair Housing Act, all incredible legislation that was monumental to the civil rights movement. Now, all he has to do is not send young men to die in Vietnam, and he'll be the best president in history. Richard Milhous Nixon, the Green. I like that Nixon built himself as anti-counterculture, and then he created the Environmental Protection Agency. It really just goes to show that he was our only hippie president. Gerald Ford, the Lame. After Nixon and his vice president Spiro Agnew resigned, Ford became the only man never elected to become president. Other than that, he didn't really do anything. He oversaw the presidency during a chaotic time after the Watergate scandal, and then lost. Jimmy Carter, the farmer. He was a peanut farmer, and he used that in his campaign, which is how we ended up with this abomination.
Ronald Reagan, the actor?
George H.W. Bush, the mild. Following in the success of Reagan, Bush did have high approval ratings following the Gulf War, but it was the taxes that ultimately killed him, and by next election, he had no chance. Bill Clinton, the musician. He played the saxophone on TV, he was president after the Soviet Union collapsed, and unfortunately, he was our first baby boomer president. George W. Bush, the dull. No Child Left Behind was a complete disaster, and he was destined to be a one-term president had it not been for that fateful day in September of 2001. Also, the 2008 recession was pretty bad. Not bad for me, I was playing the Nintendo Wii, but it was not good for my parents.
Barack Obama!
The hopeful. His Hope campaign is still iconic to this day, and it's what got him into the White House. Unfortunately, Michelle Obama ruined school lunches.
Donald Trump!
The rich. He's our first billionaire president, and he ruined Grover Cleveland's legacy.
Joe Biden!
The sleepy. You know, he could have been a pretty decent president 30 years ago. Unfortunately, he's going to be remembered as an old ass. And that's all the president's epithets. And once again, happy 4th of July and 250th birthday to New Jersey and the 12 others.